John Milton's epic poem, Paradise Lost, is generally remembered for two reasons. The first is the famous quote from Satan, having just been expelled from heaven, when he declares, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." And the other reason why Milton's Paradise Lost is generally remembered is it is this poem that gives us the fiery depiction of hell, dramatically juxtaposed to that cold and frozen hell of Dante's Inferno, thus seeping into popular culture the belief that hell is a birthplace of fire and torment. Milton's poem was written over various stages of his life and was published in the aftermath of the restoration of the monarchy and the Church of England, with its significant Romish elements to it that resulted from the Caroline divines, who had embraced the study of the patristic fathers in giving the Church of England a more foundational theology. The work is, therefore, a rich and dense poem that tries to do many things, and among those many things are Milton's own intellectual commentary on issues relating to history, politics, and theology. In its most simplistic reading, Paradise Lost is a grand poem of the Christian imagination. It is a work that imagines the war in heaven, the fall of the angels, the rise of Satan, and the fall of man. Taking biblical inspiration, Milton takes poetic and imaginative license to fill in the gaps, so to speak, creating an awe-inspiring and wondrous depiction of what Cotton Mather would later call the wonders of the invisible world. In attempting to justify the ways of God to men, Milton not only does battle with Satan, he is also doing battle with the theology of supralapsarian Cambridge Calvinism, expounded by men like William Perkins and William Ames. He is also confronting the church politics of his day and confronting the mechanical philosophers who, in their vision of the world, the cosmos, and human life, give us one of the worst depictions of a life just of pure desire, one without love, happiness, or possible serenity. All of that is contained within Paradise Lost. The obvious reading is clear enough, but when one engages in the reading of Paradise Lost, one should be aware of all the other issues that Milton is dealing with, and specifically how Milton uses irony, allegory, and satire to deal with the political and philosophical issues that he is contesting within the great poem. The poets of the past, of course, have always been gifted in their use of irony, and how irony and satire is often tied to allegory. Milton is therefore carrying on a grand tradition within Paradise Lost when he engages the use of irony, satire, and allegory to deal with the multitude of issues confronted within the text. Specifically, here we shall look at one of the speeches of a fallen angel and how it relates to the church politics of Milton's own day. Book 2 is undoubtedly one of the great literary achievements of Milton and Paradise Lost. It is, in fact, from many commentators, one of the grandest achievements in Milton's entire corpus. The book can be broken down into two movements. The first are the speeches of Moloch, Belial, Mammon, and Beelzebub in Pandemonium. The speeches are wonderfully crafted and dialectically paired with each other in their own rights. The second movement, and arguably the grander achievement of Milton, is how Satan engages in a heroic journey and ascent to Eden, while braving the winds and storms of chaos like the classical heroes of literary antiquity. Those familiar with Homer and Virgil would see echoes of Odysseus and Aeneas. But it is Belial's speech that concerns us here, and how in Belial's speech, Milton is engaged in a sharp criticism of church politics. Among the speeches the fallen angels make, Moloch advocates for war, for an attempt to storm heaven once more, and he is dialectically paired against Belial, who advocates a pious fatalism in accepting their newly fated reality of being residents of hell. They are paired together, just as Mammon makes clear in the beginning of his speech, because of the futile vanity entailed in both of their positions. To try to wage war against heaven again will fail, as is Moloch's advocacy, and to simply accept their defeated state of being is equally futile. It is a futile vanity, and it of course accepts the victory of God. The fallen angels should have remained on their backs, according to Belial, and stared up at heaven, following their expulsion, rather than to try to be lords over Tartarus. While Mammon and Beelzebub are dialectically contrasts to one another, as they advocate in their own ways to make a sort of paradise of heaven or hell on earth, it is Belial's speech that Milton uses to critique the latitudinarians in English church politics. Regarding political and church allegory, church politics, it is rather clear that the fallen angels are, in this case, the expelled Commonwealth men who faithfully served Cromwell and the Protectorate prior to the Restoration. As John Leonard makes clear in his introduction to Paradise Lost, Milton's poem is one of civil war in an era of civil war within England. But Milton, as we know, was a steadfast Republican and supporter of Cromwell, and the moderate Puritans seeking to purify the Church of England, but a Puritan not in the supralapsarian Calvinist sense like Perkins and Ames, who denied free will. This is, of course, seen within Paradise Lost in numerous ways. First, Pandemonium is structured like a parliament. There is a Speaker of the House who keeps order, in this case, Satan. The fallen angels take turns deliberating their positions, giving speeches, much like parliamentarians in Parliament. Moreover, each of the angels who speaks represents an identifiable position among the Commonwealth men and clerics who suffered under the Great Expulsion. Included, at least initially, in that expulsion were the latitudinarians, the theologians who advocated acceptance of the Restoration, acceptance of the sovereignty of King Charles, and accommodation to the Church of England, so as to not cause any more trouble. The latitudinarians sought peace and restoration with the monarchy and the Church of England. And this is the case of Belial. Belial's speech reflects the position of the latitudinarians in English church politics. Furthermore, Milton considers the latitudinarian position worthless. Now here is the great kicker in Miltonian irony. Milton was a great, gifted linguist who mastered Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Syriac, among other languages. Belial in Hebrew means worthless. Like the latitudinarians, Belial rises and is seen as more graceful and humane in comparison to Moloch, who is advocating rash war. A fairer person lost not heaven, he seemed, for dignity composed and high exploit, but all was false and hollow. Milton highlights, through his satirization of Belial in his speech before the Stygian Council, that appearances are deceiving, much like the expulsed latitudinarians, who in appearance seem like godly and humane men, but who, like Belial, are otherwise worthless, as they are going to accept the restoration of Charles II and the Romish Church of England. The latitudinarians are willing to give up all of the reforms that their Puritan forebears had made to have a new accommodation with the Church of England. Also consider the content of Belial's speech. Belial is advocating peace in the name of submission as defeated and vanquished opponents. But the fallen angels, departed from the serenity and the serendipity of heaven, can never have peace. Rather than valiantly, though vainly, trying to storm heaven again, as Moloch advocated, Belial argues that the fallen should just accept their lot and get on with their now miserable lives. His speech is worthless, just like how his name means worthless in Hebrew. So not only is Belial worthless and living up to his name, which is supposed to be funny, the latitudinarian perspective, which is allegorically represented and satirized in Belial's speech, is also worthless. Milton is trying to speak to the latitudinarians, saying, do not embrace this sad, sorry position, the sad, sorry position of Belial. Milton was also philosophically active, and not just politically and linguistically and theologically active during his life. Well read and studied, Milton's many works, poems, including Paradise Lost, also incorporate his own philosophical reflections. In 1660, when the epic poem was published, Francis Bacon and Thomas Hobbes had both published their works which advocated for mechanistic determinism and a reductive materialist physiology. Beyond Bacon and Hobbes, Descartes had just published his Meditations, and the mind-body problem was becoming a major debate throughout Europe's intelligentsia. Milton had already entered this fray by offering in De Doctrina Christiana, a work that wasn't published in his life but already written before the publication of Paradise Lost, his own personal theology for Christianity, a synthetic divine monism which attempted to avoid the passionless materialism of the mechanical philosophers, as well as resolving the mind-body problem arisen by Descartes and the Cartesian philosophers. In this respect, Milton was a spiritual father to Romanticism, and like his eventual successor, the great poet Reverend Jonathan Swift, Milton was an ardent critic of the soulless materialism emerging from the early Enlightenment thinkers. Love would be destroyed if the mechanical philosophers won the day, and Milton detected a strand of mechanical philosophy which threatened love, eros, from Aristotle to the Scholastic to now, more dangerously, the philosophies of Bacon, Hobbes, and Descartes. If Paradise Lost is remembered beyond Milton's depiction of hell and Satan, it is almost certainly remembered for his graphic depiction of the sexual relationship and the love of Adam and Eve prior to their fall. So spoke our General Mother, and with eyes of conjugal attraction unreproved and meek surrender, half her swelling breast naked met his under the flowing gold of her loose tresses hid. He in delight, both of her beauty and submissive charms, smiled with superior love, as Jupiter on Juno smiles when he impregs the clouds that shed May flowers, and pressed her matron lip with kisses pure. Aside the devil turned for envy, yet with jealous leer malign eyed them askance, and to himself thus plained, sight hateful, sight tormenting, thus these two, emparadised in one another's arms, the happier Eden shall enjoy their fill of bliss on bliss, while I to hell am thrust, where neither joy nor love, but fierce desire, among our other torments not the least, still unfulfilled, with pain of longing pines. Milton's Eden and Milton's humanity, Adam and Eve, are filled with love, with passion. More than just love, they are filled with a teeming and erotic love. This is not just the love that you give to your spouse because you are married. This is an intoxicating love, one that fills and grips the soul and produces great beauty and great passion within it. Adam is taken captive by Eve's naked charms. Her eyes, her breasts, her nipples, her stomach, her hair, everything about her, Adam passionately covets. And likewise, Eve loves Adam. The great depiction of Adam and Eve is in their beauty, in their love, and how in their beauty and love, Satan, upon seeing them, is filled with envy. In Eden, the naked and glorious bodies that they have are not the soulless dead bodies of the modern physiologists, not the bodies and the material composite nature of the mechanical philosophers who have stripped and eliminated passion from the human soul and body, and who reduce love to mere stimulation of certain atoms. No, Milton's depiction of Adam and Eve is one of glory, one of beauty, one of love. Many of us who live in the 21st century are familiar with the now emergent strand of materialist philosophies concerning love. Love is nothing but the mechanical firing of your atoms because of chemical stimulation. What a pathetic and hollow view of love. But that is the view of love that Milton saw as inevitable from the mechanical philosophers. And Milton majestically rejects that view of love in presenting Adam and Eve as living passionately and lovingly in their bodies, indeed divine bodies, because God is love and love is God, as Milton knew as a theology student. And Adam and Eve, being the creation of God and made in the image of God, in that image of love, are therefore made for love. And this is what Milton gives us in his great grand depictions of the love of Adam and Eve and the love within Eden before the fall. Milton's philosophical commentary is also seen in how Satan describes himself. Satan here represents the mechanical philosophers of Milton's era. If you had studied philosophy, as I had studied philosophy as an undergraduate and in graduate school, you would know that the materialist philosophers are asserting in the 17th century that all there is mere desire. There is no such thing as love. There is no such thing as joy. The body simply needs to eat. The body is compelled by a deterministic desire, but ultimately that desire will remain unfulfilled. Now listen again to Satan's cry upon seeing the beauty and the love of Adam and Eve. Sight hateful, sight tormenting. Thus these two, imparadised in one another's arms, the happier Eden shall enjoy their fill of bliss on bliss, while I to hell am thrust, where neither joy nor love, but fierce desire, among our other torments not the least, still unfulfilled, with pain of longing pines. Here, Milton is asserting that if you embrace the mechanical philosophers, you will end up like Satan. You will be cast out of Eden. You will be thrust into hell. You will not find happiness. You will not find joy. You will not find love. All you will have is your base bodily desire, and it will remain unfulfilled. And that is the great contrast between the Christian view of the body and of cosmology versus the materialist view of the body and cosmology. The Christian view is one in which the cosmos is beautiful, is loving, because God is beauty and God is love, And by dwelling in that beauty and love, as Adam and Eve are before the fall, they find love, joy, and happiness. And this is what anyone can achieve in the Christian life. By contrast, the philosophers of materialism give us a world stripped of passion, stripped of beauty, one in which all there is bodily desire that will never be fulfilled. And thus you can see how Milton is also satirizing and condemning and rejecting the materialist philosophers by associating their worldview with the worldview of Satan. When you are reading Paradise Lost, realizing and recognizing some of the history, the intellectual challenges, the church politics of Milton's own time being part of the story is what makes the epic so powerful. There are, as outlined, many layers to Milton's grand epic. The poem is tragic and heroic. It is steamy and sexy, quite literally. And, most importantly, it is a work of intellectual criticism. One of the greater joys in reading Milton's Paradise Lost is realizing his attempt to synthesize everything together. And we, as readers, have that ability to find joy with Milton in recognizing all the things that Milton was commenting on in Paradise Lost.